My name is Patricia Kathleen, and this podcast series will contain interviews I conduct with women, female identified, and non binary individuals regarding their professional stories and personal narrative as it relates to their perspective. This podcast is designed to hold a space for all individuals to learn from their counterparts, regardless of age, status, or industry. We intend to transparently investigate the evolving global dialogue regarding underrepresented figures in all industries across the USA and abroad. By hosting these stories and conversations, we aim to contribute to the changing platform and representation of these individuals for the future. Now let's start the conversation. And welcome back. This is your host, Patricia, and today I am sitting down with Amanda Boleyn. Amanda is the founder and CEO of She Did It Her Way. You can find it on shediditherwaypodcast.com. Welcome, Amanda.
Thank you, Patricia. I'm excited to be here.
I am too. I'm so excited to kind of get into your story. As a fellow podcaster, I love chatting up people who have been doing what we're doing here, and also kind of climb into your other business endeavors. For everyone listening, I'll read a bio on Amanda, but first I am going to go over the roadmap of today's podcast. It will follow the trajectory that all of the podcasts in this series follow in its constituents. Namely, we'll look at Amanda's academic background and early professional life. Then we'll turn our attention towards unpacking She Did It Her Way podcast series and other current endeavors that Amanda has going on right now. Then we will turn our focus towards goals that she has for the next 3 years regarding expansion, branding expansion, all of those things. And we'll wrap everything up with advice that Amanda has for those of you looking to emulate what she's done, get involved with her current endeavors, and all of that good stuff. A quick bio on Amanda before I start peppering her with questions. Amanda Boleyn is the founder and CEO of She Did It Her Way. Shortly after 2 years in corporate America post-undergrad, Amanda made a leap, moved from West Des Moines, Iowa to Chicago, Illinois, and became a full-time freelancer, traveling the globe and delivering sales, marketing, leadership development, and employee trainings with large organizations. Some of her companies include JP Morgan, ATT, Weight Watchers, Intel, University of Kansas Medical Center, and others. Amanda first launched She Did It Her Way podcast in January of 2015 and has consistently been ranked as one of the top resources for female entrepreneurs by Inc.com, Forbes, Entrepreneur.com, Huffington Post, and many others. She Did It Her Way has been downloaded over 2 million times and continues to grow every day. Amanda's signature course, Ultimate Leap Suite Academy, is designed to help women take massive action on their business idea, turn their passion into profits, and create freedom in their life. So Amanda, I can't wait to kind of climb into how I love kind of the trajectory of what you've done with your career thus far. But first, can you start us off with like a good solid platform of understanding with your academic background and early professional life?
Yeah. I'll get right into it. So, I am originally born and raised in Dubuque, Iowa. So it's a town of 65,000 people. I'm sure you'll hear the Midwestern come through in my Midwest accent here.
Nice.
But so I went to University of Iowa. I studied finance as my undergrad and then got my certificate in entrepreneurship. And I've always been really interested in building and creating things. And I always am so focused on growth and kind of like what's the next thing, and like business development really gets me excited. So when I left undergrad after being at University of Iowa for 4 years, that's when I took my job at Target in they call them executive team leader roles, so ETLs. And that was my first job out of college. I was in a store in West Des Moines, Iowa. It was a super Target, and my job was to cover the soft lines. And that basically encompasses everything that you see on the carpet, from boys, girls, men's, women, ready to wear, jewelry, all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And that was my first job. It was a really great learning experience. It was definitely one of the most challenging experiences. Target's a fantastic company. And especially when working in stores, you get pushed to the brim. And I kind of always related that experience as sort of this military and retail, but then also post-college of learning how to suck it up and learning how to grow as an individual. So I did that for about 13 months. And at about month 6 into that experience, I just knew that it wasn't for me. And I'm kind of like going way, way back here into that experience. Actually, I just kind of started going into my entire story, but you just asked academically. So I'm going to pause there. I just like,
No,
went
that's
over the
really
story.
great though, because I think that's the whole
Yeah.
point, right? None of them are neatly segregated out. Like as
Right.
human beings, our career is not somehow divorced from our personality or our personal life. And I think that's
Totally.
a large part of like why this platform and this space is being held for people. And you sussed it
Hmm.
out. We talked earlier in the week with another really, really advanced kind of titan of a woman who said the same thing. She said, it's curious to me how people are always trying to divorce the personal from the business, because it's
Mm,
particularly in this day of self-branding, it's just simply not done that much anymore. It's how much of the personal
right.
you want to bring into it. I am curious though, when you talked about the ETL or the executive team, I don't know if it was leaders or what the
Leader.
L was for
Yeah.
it, leader. So I had
Mhm.
extensive experience putting myself through college in, I worked for Nordstrom for a series of years. And there was
Oh,
a great deal of like, I think that the behind the scenes is like working at a restaurant. If you've never done it, you really don't get like all of the different and various components that go along into that mechanism. So when you talk about the ETL, which I'm
mm,
not familiar with, did you have interactions with buyers? Were you also in charge of like looking at the sales revenues? What kind of information were they giving you and
yeah.
requiring from you?
Such a great question, and love Nordstrom. My mom works for the distribution center in Iowa, and it's such a great company as well. Working at Target in ETL, it was very fitting in the fact that you kind of ran your own business. So my entire job as an ETL over soft lines was to manage and know my business in and out in terms of the revenue. How much were we bringing in every week? What was the markdown percentages? Were we losing money? And so it was really up to me to manage that business of the store. And I also managed, and I had 4 direct reports, and then I had indirect reports. And then other days of the week, they call it LOD. So it's leader on duty, where you're managing the entire store operations. And the store that I was in at the time was $65 million in value. So on a
Wow.
given weekend, you could be doing $150,000 in revenue in one day, managing also indirectly or directly anywhere from 50 to 75 employees. And that obviously changes with seasonality, and you've got Q4 and all that stuff. But as a 22-year-old coming out of college and having that experience and responsibility, there's nothing else like it. And at the time, there were challenges in it. But obviously looking back and that hindsight, like learning a lot, and that actually put me on the next path and the next step that I took in my career, and understanding and knowing that it's so important to hire the right people, to retain the
Hmm.
talent, and to coach and develop them in a way, because I was put into a work center where all my direct report, all the our store in and of itself was one of the bottom performing stores in terms of talent and operationally in like 13 or 14 stores in the district. And within my soft lines was where they had the what do they call it, like the bottom performing team leaders. So as a newbie coming in and learning how to even get your management skills, and learning how you manage and how you coach, and then also learning exactly the operations of how the business works, was a lot to handle. And through that like experience of being there for only 13 months, I learned what it was to put people on corrective action and to coach them into a role or out of a role, and learning like how people in your business are so important to getting the job done. And it makes it easier as a leader to be able to run and manage your business if you have really great people working for you, and if you coach correctly and you have the correct leadership like capabilities to lead your team too.
Yeah, it's baptism by fire to be put in on like the lowest
Yes.
rung with the most struggling people and having to
Yeah.
like redirect. And I mean, it's
A lot of
amazing. You
tears.
can learn a lot in that situation, but yeah, it's not the most comfortable, cozy
No.
position usually. You kind of come out of it like a victim of war with a lot of information, but a lot of
Mhm.
scars. So you took that and then you launched into, you didn't launch She Did It Her Way until 2015. So after this executive team leader experience at
Yeah.
Target, where did you go to next?
So I actually went through a third-party agency and found myself at a job for about 8 months at Wells Fargo doing recruiting.
Wow.
And kind of what She Did It Her Way stands for now, and I'll get into this, is really about helping women transition out of corporate and taking the skills that they have and the things that they're doing and really create that business so that they can find their own freedom through doing that in a location independence realm. So for me, when I left Target and I went to Wells Fargo, that was actually a really big leap for me, because I went from having a really comfortable salary for someone who's 23 years old living in Iowa, who had really great benefits, who had PTO, who had a retirement program, to then when I went to this third-party agency, I took a 20% pay cut. I lost all PTO. I didn't have any sort of retirement 401k. That was up to me to get. And so that really set me up for when I made my ultimate leap 8 months later, which was then after being at Wells Fargo for 8 months, I had an opportunity to basically become this subcontractor, where I worked with about a handful of companies whose end clients, like JP Morgan, AT&T, Weight Watchers, Intel, I would get hired to work on their projects. And it was various around sales and marketing, leadership development, employee engagement. And so I did that for about from 2012 and I still do a little bit of it today with large corporate clients, but I don't take on as much because I'm obviously running She Did It Her Way. But it was in 2015 that, I was traveling every single week, and I kind of got this urge where I'm like, I want something of my own. And it started out purely as a hobby, and I love talking. And so that's how we kind of got to the podcast. It started as a podcast, but it really didn't turn into a business until late 2017, early 2018. And
so you started the
definitely get into
podcast
that
in 2015. And who did you start talking
Yep.
with? Who were your original initial clients? What were you saying? Was it structured? How are you doing all of that?
Oh my gosh. Thinking back to our first episode, which I'm sure like you could probably relate to this, and anyone else who's, you start something in the beginning and 3-4 years later, you're like, oh my God, I can't believe I put that out in the world. It's still good content, but then you look at your branding and everything else like that. So a lot of the messaging and interviews are still very similar to that of today, in terms of interviewing women who are entrepreneurs that have quit their business, or not quit their business, quit their job and have built their business. Now the podcast and the interviews and the content is it's more focused on service-based businesses and coaches, and really getting people connecting that bridge from here's what you want to do, and here's how you get started, right? Getting started is really where a lot of people get stuck, because they just don't know what next step to take. And so our goal at She Did It Her Way is to leverage the content like the podcast to inspire, motivate, and provide tactical and practical steps for people to take their very next best step. So, it used to be like tech startups, because that was the big thing. So it was really all over the place, because I didn't have, in the beginning, it wasn't focused. It was just a hobby. Let's see what works, throwing things up against the wall. Like, this is fun. And obviously over the years, it's become more intentional and more funneled, I guess, if you will, into specifically who we're talking to today and how our products and services can help those people.
Yeah. Do you ever get reached out to, being kind of a veteran in the field? I know I get a ton of correspondence from people who are looking for advice launching their podcast, because somewhere along the line, Business Week, like 9-10 months ago, said, like, you want to get anywhere, start a podcast. So everyone was like, I got to do this.
Yeah.
And so I'm wondering, have you tied into your branch, because you have kind of manifested from this podcast series into what you just called, like, launching women to help transition out of corporate into their own businesses with She Did It Her Way, kind of this company. Do you have like an advisory or any type of a system where you help people start their podcast because that's how you did it? Or is that just something that is your personal story?
No, that's a really great question. I had a lot of people, people still do reach out about how to start a podcast. And for a while it was happening a lot. And then I actually created a course, because I'm like, I can't, from a time bandwidth perspective. So I did create a course. And in the course, and anytime I talk about podcasting, one of the mistakes that I would say I made, and you learn from your mistakes every single day, and they're not really mistakes. It's more of data, right? What worked, what didn't. And the thing about when I started She Did It Her Way, as it gained momentum, I started looking at it as a media company and thinking that I wanted to go to the media route, right? Which is driven by downloads. It's driven by like eyeballs, if it's a blog, that sort of thing. And I really positioned the podcast as the business. But what I teach in my Podcast Your Way course is you have to look at how the podcast is an extension of your business. How is the podcast delivering content? How are you using it to get people to join your Facebook group, get them to join the email list, that when they join the email list and they download an opt-in, you are then inviting them to a 20-minute consult call. You're inviting them to join your paid program. where there's a lot of things when I first started, I had no strategy, no understanding. So that's really where I always recommend, I tell people, like, first, why are you starting a podcast? Secondly, what's the strategy and how does it fit into your overall business? And then 3 is just getting really clear on like who your podcast serves, who's your ideal listener, and how are you going to help them in why your podcast? Why would someone listen to it? And like, who are the type of guests or what type of content are you going to serve up?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And crystallizing that, I think, is exactly what most people who are getting ready to jump into podcasts don't really have
Yeah.
figured out yet. I
Like
always
those
say,
3
well,
things, just
what
do
is
those
it
3 things.
about? And they're like, I don't know. And I was like,
Like,
so
it just
figure
sounds like a
out
good
that.
idea. Yeah.
So let's
'Cause
get
it's
an
a lot.
idea.
It takes a lot of, I mean, there's a lot of moving pieces into the
Yeah.
creating, podcasting. We have so many pieces, and we use Asana, which is a project management software tool, and absolutely love it. And I've got VAs doing a lot of the work now, but in the beginning, man, like it, it's not, you got to know exactly what the strategy is and why you're doing it and
Yeah.
the purpose.
Absolutely. I agree. And VAs are a wonderful tool, but a little bit, and for everyone listening, those are virtual assistants, and they've become kind of this hot topic and heavily used thing, at least in my realm that I function in, over the past maybe 14 months. And there was a lot of trail of tears in the beginning, but I think people have started to fine tune, and they largely come from pockets overseas. Virtual assistants are,
Mm-hmm.
the Philippines is a big one, at least for a lot of the people employing them in the San Diego area that I'm in tech in San Francisco, where I'm from. So so I like this idea of the
Yeah.
transition, and that you started with the podcast in 2015, and it kind of eventually morphed into She Did It Her Way being this corporate entity in 2017. You were saying roughly around there. Can you tell me a little bit more
Yep.
about the difference? Like, do you differentiate the two, or do you allow them to share the same body of water? Is one simply the podcast and the other is the strategic business? How does that work?
Yeah, no. So definitely now the everything is in one umbrella, if you will, under She Did It Her Way. And I've positioned it, I've now made it to where the podcast is strategic. It's not just throwing content at the wall. It's not just, we're going to have this content on this date. Like, there's a lot more strategy behind it, and looking at, okay, what's our launch calendar look like? What type of content do I want to start planning around the launch calendar? Do I even want to have interviews and guests on the podcast, or do I want to keep it my own content that I release and then have guest interviews as bonus content, right? As far as the
Mm-hmm.
products and services, we had some sponsorship in the beginning, but really I would say our first offer was an in-person event, which I feel like if you talk to anyone, they're going to tell you don't do an in-person event to start with. But for me, I just love being around people. I love being a maestro of things. I love connecting and
Yeah.
facilitating learning. And so I thought, and it felt, energetically aligned. And I said, okay, let's try a one-day event in Chicago in October 17. So in 3 months, I put it together. I did a one-day event. We had 35 women from 11 different countries. And that really solidified for me that in-person events was definitely going to be something of our business model. Since then, the first 2 years, we're really still getting clarity on exactly who it is that we're helping. Who is she? What is she doing? What is she thinking? Is she product-based? Is she service-based? Is she doing tech company? Like, what is that? So there are a lot of things that we threw against the wall and to see what stuck and what didn't work, and what we wanted to relaunch, what we wanted to retire, or maybe figure out like how can it fit into another product and really start to streamline it, right? And I think that
Right.
is like, there's so much expansion at the beginning, and now it's hyper focused on our 6-month accelerator program, and then or a one-on-one with me. But my job, like my goal, is to always get people into the 6-month Launch to Leap Accelerator, which even going and talking about things evolving. So at the beginning, at the time when it was sent over, we did have the academy, the Ultimate Leap Suite Academy, right? And even after doing that, we realized, okay, wait a second, doing an academy or an 8-week group coaching program isn't entirely sustainable for people who want to quit their jobs, because in order to see traction, in order to see growth and true movement, it takes more than 8 weeks. And so that's why we created the 6-month accelerator program, where people are being supported throughout that entire process, and they're getting access to all the content and material and the coaching and the accountability advisor calls and things like that.
Can you lead us through some of the, like, clearly you have some axioms or some pillars, behind this kind of like encouraging women to transition from corporate into kind of their own enterprise or empire. I imagine you have certain industries that you specialize in helping more specifically. And I don't know if that would be industries that you help people kind of graduate from and transition over into, or if it's the going into that you specialize in, or if you feel like your reach is broad enough and your advice is basic enough that you can hit all industries. And also walking them through processes. Are you hitting on, like, I imagine thinking about like personal financing, business financing, like some of these things that you would want to like checklist down. Have you compiled all of that, or do you deal with just one specific area of that information?
Yeah, no, great question. So a lot of times the people that come through our programs are ones that are looking to do something very similar in what it is that they already do in corporate and kind of transition out on their own. So for example, they might be doing social media for a large company and they want to start transitioning and getting their own clients, but they don't know what next steps are. So that is a good frame, like our primary target audience. Obviously we get other people beyond that who don't know exactly what they want to do, which there's freebies to help them get clarity on it. And then as far as like inside the program, we do touch on, I don't teach the legal. We have legal guest experts that teach on the basics to know about incorporating your entity and how to do it in what state. And there's also websites that we give as direction where people can go to. I've got accountants who teach on like the bare basics and just getting started with accounting. So we do touch on, it's kind of like a holistic approach. And like you were saying, one of the things with when it comes to leaving and quitting your job and building your business, part of getting clarity and setting revenue goals for your business in the beginning is also getting clear on what's your personal income. What are you bringing in? What's going out? What are your goals? Like, do you want to pay off debt before you make the leap? When do you want to make the leap? All of those different things, along with like planning for business insurance, understanding healthcare insurance situations. So there's programs inside of the 6-month accelerator that takes students through those, the thought process and also like the worksheets to understand, like, here are the things to consider. Here's what you have to budget and plan for. Here's how we're going to get clear on like what you like, I always tell people to set an ultimate leap date. And then how do you work backwards from that? And here are the things that we got to do to actually get us to your goal that you set.
Yeah. How many people are you taking on in the accelerator? Do you have a maximum head count? And if your matriculation is 6 months, are you rolling 2 a year or just 1 a year?
So it's a revolving door, which is kind of nice. So there's a like a roadmap inside of there that when people come in, it's kind of like this roadmap, this checklist. Obviously people are going to come in differently. And what I really like about the revolving door is that you don't run into the hurry up, everybody's got to get in at this time. And so really the methodology is having conversations with people and then giving them the option to say like, great, if you want to work, we can work one-on-one, which is, the higher price point, or join the accelerator program, the 6 months, and then you get all X, Y, and Z, and it's a lower monthly investment, but it still gets them to commit to the 6-month long-term. Personally, I right now have it to where I can take on 40 people in the accelerator program. Beyond that, I definitely plan on intentionally like hiring more accountability advisors to come in and to create that high touch environment for the students going through the program, because that really is where the accountability comes in, where oftentimes there's so many online digital courses that you take, but then they build like dust on the shelf just sitting there. And so I really wanted so that people feel supported. So there's a Facebook group, there's also the accountability piece of it, and then onboarding calls when they come into the program.
Okay. And then, yeah, I mean, it sounds like the structure is there. So if people are looking to find out more about the Accelerator group, I know that it's kind of a hot thing. There's in person, there's a lot of online accelerators, but people really benefit from them. I think that that's why they're so exciting. It's not this kind of like sub-culinary degree. It's like people are actually saying that's like what really kind of help them realize their all of their endeavors and what they needed to do. So I think when people put information in, they or put the effort in, accelerators really work. And so if people are looking to look into your accelerator, can they just get on your She Did It Her Way podcast.com and find out all about it, or just hit you up on She Did It Her Way social media handle?
Yeah, you actually, if you go to shediditherwaypodcast.com/accelerator, that's where you guys can, like, people can go to learn about that. Also, there's a work with me tab. So if it's something that you're curious about, but you're not sure it's a good fit, or you want to learn a little bit more, you can schedule a 20-minute call with me. And then we can go through that process to really see if it's a good fit and to get into the program. So at your own pace and go at it at yourself, like go your own way. But otherwise you can decide to accelerate that process and learn and be supported, not just from a coach, but also other people who are going through it at the same time as you as well. And then sharing ideas throughout that entire process.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, looking forward, yourself at like, because it seems like, it sounds like in the past 3 years, you've kind of followed this kind of beautiful chart and line from the podcast into this coaching, into this development of developing your own podcast, and now into the accelerator. Do you develop like 1 to 3 business year plans? And if so, what does the next 3 years look like in regards for She Did It Her Way, the podcast, and the business, scaling, branding, expansion, all of that?
Yeah, that's such a good question. Yes. So with our 3-year plan is definitely to get to high a multi 6-figure, if not 7-figure in revenue. But more importantly, from that is to get 20 students into the the Launch to Leap Accelerator program. So that's one. The other thing is to really build out the ascension model. So the initial point of contact that when people interact with us will be the Launch to Leap Accelerator program. Then beyond that is really looking at, okay, what's the additional layer? What's the additional next step that we can offer to those students who are coming out of that program? And I anticipate it's probably something about, post leap, post after you take that ultimate leap, coming out of the Launch to Leap program, what does that look like? So building out the ascension model and providing that next step, if you're to look at it kind of like the Wizard of Oz with the yellow brick road, is really creating what does that yellow brick road look like for us? And then how can we continually add value to the students who are going through the program? So super simple, just keeping it like, if this is the revenue mark, how many students we need. And I think at a $500 per month price point, I think it came out to 168 students. So that's a really goal. And then, because of that, with the students and the revenue is really looking at like, how many women do we want ultimately to go through the program and to start their own business as well? So that's a really big focus for us in the next 3 years.
Absolutely. And it sounds like a great guiding light, right? A great beacon to kind of set your future goals by. So I'm wondering, we've gotten to the place in the podcast, which is my very favorite, which is why I leave it to last. I'm curious if someone was walking up to you today or tomorrow at not a coffee shop or a park, because we're not allowed to go in those anymore. But if we were pre COVID-19.
Maybe a virtual coffee shop.
Yeah, right. A virtual coffee shop on a Zoom party chat room. I'm wondering if someone was seeking advice from you as a young woman or a female identified or non-binary individual, came up to you and said, listen, I have this idea. I've had these great corporate experiences, but I'm really thinking that's not really the path for me. I've garnered all of the information I want to garner. I'm thinking about starting a podcast and then getting into like my own stream of whatever I'm good at in business. What are the top 3 pieces of advice you would give that individual right now, knowing what you know?
Yes. For that, I would just get really clear on what are you selling and how are you selling it? Like what is the offer that you are looking to put out there? How are you helping people, and who is it that you're helping people? And then what is your marketing strategy? I think so often it's easy to get, and I say that because it's very easy, and I've done this myself in the past, especially getting started, to focus on the things that are not necessarily driving revenue. And I don't know if that comes from a place of procrastination. It comes from a place of unconsciously like protecting ourselves. But people can get started. And I want people to know this, that you can get started and build a 6-figure business without even having a website, period. Sometimes we focus so much on, I need a website. But what happens is that people think that they need that website, and then they stall out on building the website because it's so overwhelming. So then they think it's conditional that I need a website before I can go get clients. And the truth is that that's BS. what you need is you can easily create. So one of the things that I have my clients and students do is you can easily create a 1-page, 2-pager PDF document. You can do this in Canva. You can create your Facebook business page, and all you need to do is start emailing people and start doing direct messages and get in front of as many people as possible, because that, especially in the beginning with services and offerings, that's what's going to lead to getting clients. It's not necessarily like needing a website or needing to have all this social media or having to have an audience of 50,000 downloads and listenership. It doesn't mean that you have to have like 5,000 people on your email list either. Like, I am such a big proponent of getting started, taking messy, massive action, whatever that looks like, doing it with a plan and focusing on what are the revenue generating activities and getting clear on what is your offer, who are you offering it to, and then how are you selling it? So what is your marketing, sales and marketing strategy, and just having as many conversations with people as you possibly can. That's what that's what I recommend. Yes.
Whatever it looks like. I like that. That's fantastic. All right. So I think
Yes.
I've got 2 out of that because there were about 15. But
passive action.
Yeah. Get clear on what you're selling, why you're selling it, and how you're selling it. Taking messy, massive action, whatever that looks like. And then your third piece of advice would be?
Let's see. Get out of, do as best as you can to be present and get out of your own head, because what's going to happen is that your primitive brain is going to want to keep you safe. It's going to be scary. You might not want to send that email. You're going to be worried about what other people think. What if they reject me? All this stuff. Stay out of your head and focus on like the end result of what you can offer and how your offer is going to help your customer, and come from a place of serving and get into that mindset to help get you in alignment versus worrying about what other people are going to think.
Yeah.
Because people are going to have opinions either way.
Always. And they're not always going to be good or bad. You got to stay away from that. Stay off social. No, just kidding. But definitely don't get your opinions from there. Yeah. I love all of those. I feel like you really addressed. Because I think the 3 pieces, when you get clear on what you're selling, why you're selling it, and how you're selling it, that's very like intimate knowledge with the business, the product, all of the things. And then the messy, massive action is so wonderful because it deals with, I think, the bravery and some of the hesitancy we have with just getting work out there. Like, you don't have anything to edit until there's stuff out there ready to edit, and this kind of cautionary step slowly building is, I think you're right. Like, you can build a business 100%. Without a website, and kind of getting caught up on some of those particularities that people have or don't have is what slows them down. And then your last one, to get out of your head and do the best you can is where we're all at. It's the personal, id and ego of being a human being. So I love those. I think those are genius. I really appreciate them. And I love what you're doing. I can't wait. I think I would love to circle back around and convince you to hook back up with us in about 9 months and find out where She Did It Her Way is at.
I would love it.
And do everything. So I just want to say thank you so much, Amanda, for your time and giving us all of your information and your insight today.
Thank you, Patricia, so much. This is really it's an honor to be on your show and also to hang out with you and your listeners. And if anyone's listening, come connect, hang out with me. We have a Facebook group. It's Her Way Community. And then also you can follow us on Instagram. I'm in and out of those DMs all the time. So thank you so much.
Absolutely. And for everyone listening, in case you missed it, it's shediditherwaypodcast.com. And on social media, it's at She Did It Her Way. We've been talking with Amanda Boleyn. And for all of you listening, thank you so much for giving us your time. And until we speak again next time, remember to always bet on yourself. Sluncha.